We're experimenting with live streaming this, so hopefully there will be participants. There's one person who's joined us remotely.
Is that going to rely on the bandwidth that AT&T?
I had been hoping to be able to plug in to the podium to get a hardwired connection, but I don't have that. So whoever's joining us remotely, unfortunately, I really hope that we don't lose our connection. But the wireless here is a little bit flaky, so.
Yeah, she really likes finger gathering.
That's great. Let's maybe give another minute or two and then get started. The good news is the presentation will be recorded, so people can. Yeah, people could be streaming the game and this at the same time, actually, if they wanted to. The game is over. Did we lose? That's too bad. The soccer game, World Cup.
Belgium won the World Cup.
Yeah.
Against US. Belgium versus the US. Belgium won. 2-1.
Is the United States still essentially in contention, or are they pretty much out?
I'm not sure.
I think this was an elimination round, so. Hello. That's okay. I guess we could get started. So, thank you all for coming out and missing part of the soccer game, maybe. So, my name is Chris Pfeiffer, and I'm the Communications and Web Manager for Friends General Conference. I serve FGC doing work on a whole variety of different things. I work on our communications, But one of the projects that I've been involved with for quite a while has been the Quaker Cloud, and I'll get into a lot more detail about what that is in a little bit, but let me let my colleague introduce herself.
I'm Erin Mulaney, I think I've met you already, and I'm the Communications and Cloud Associate, so a big part of my job is working with meetings that are interested in the Quaker Cloud.
So a lot of people ask me what is the Quaker Cloud in a sentence. And this is the best sentence that I was able to come up with. It's a web toolkit supporting Quaker community and process. And we tried to make it general because we think it's a flexible toolkit that allows you to do a lot of different things. So when we started talking about this idea, we didn't even have the name the Quaker Cloud. We started having conversations with meetings. We knew that meetings were really struggling with their websites. I did a search of the quakerfinder.org database, and I found that half of the meetings didn't have websites, and there were a number of other meetings that had websites on services like AngelFire, which I'm sure probably are not still online. So we started just not entirely knowing what we were going to do, just having conversations with meetings. Hearing about how it was going, how their experience was having a website, and what we heard was surprisingly consistent. I had imagined that there would be major differences between large meetings and small meetings, and meetings with a strong technical background, and meetings that don't have a geek anywhere in sight. And the stories were all the same. There were meetings who are really clear, they just done Quaker Quest, were really clear that they needed to have a web presence, but they didn't know where to start. There are meetings that had a website that was put together by a friend who was very technically inclined, and then she moved to Florida, and nobody knows how to update it. Or there are meetings whose websites are hosted on an attender's brother-in-law's server, and he stopped attending 2 years ago, and worship time has been wrong for 2 years, and nobody knows how to update it. So, I mean, these are some of the stories that we heard over and over again. We had conversations with meetings of a variety of different sizes. One of the meetings we worked with really closely was Chestnut Hill in the Philadelphia yearly meeting, and they're a meeting that actually have somebody with my exact skill set in their meeting who was willing to help them with their website. And over time, they ended up joining the Quaker Cloud and have been very, very happy and very excited with what it's been able to offer. As we were talking with meetings, we found there were other problems that were coming up. I was doing genealogy research on my family at one of the Quaker archives in the Philadelphia area, and I was talking with the archivist, and he said there are meetings where they have 200 years worth of minutes, and they can't find the minutes from 2005. And I said, yeah, computers. He said, no, the problem was the photocopier. The moment that one handwritten copy of the minutes stopped being the only copy, suddenly we stopped being as good at storing and keeping our history as friends. So, and then there were other stories. There were meetings where, a story that Erin ran into, a meeting where they had the recording clerk sent their laptop to electronics recycling with 5 years of minutes on it. And there were those meetings that were really good at keeping it, and they had binders. And so during Meeting for Business, somebody would say, well, we talked about this 3 years ago, and if they were lucky, somebody could go to the binder and 15 minutes, a half hour later, maybe find the reference to the minute that they were talking about. So a huge piece of this process, as we've designed the Quaker Cloud, is about listening, about having dialogues with meetings and understanding what their needs are and responding to them. So we started thinking about, so we're FGC. We're not a fancy web hosting company. We're not, what do we do well? And one of the things that we've been doing really well for over a century is creating communities of friends. This gathering, among other things. So as we thought about it, how do we get into creating a community of friends using this service? And what that led us to was actually a real interesting model for how you can choose who can see what you post to your meeting's website. So obviously you can have content on your meeting's website in the Quaker Cloud that's public, that's accessible to the world. And you can have content that's private, that's just accessible to members and attenders of your meeting. But the thing that we thought through was this idea of being able to share things just with other Quakers. So maybe it's something that you don't feel comfortable or the world wouldn't care about. But maybe other Quakers would. And as we thought about this, the idea that, the Madison meeting where I grew up, they were doing a carpet replacement project in their basement, and they found large amounts of asbestos. So in their minutes are a good discussion of how do we deal with unexpected capital expenses. Most of the world doesn't care. Meetings, whenever they face that, often are reinventing the wheel. So being able to search the Quaker Cloud, maybe Durham Friends Meeting searches the Quaker Cloud and finds those minutes and learns from what Madison did without Madison ever knowing they would be needed. As I mentioned before, listening and learning from friends has been a core piece of this principle, and also allowing friends to listen and learn from each other. Another principle that I think is really important is pooling our collective resources. We knew, we had conversations actually with other Quaker bodies that tried to do this. Philadelphia Yearly Meeting tried to do something very similar. And we heard their web manager, he said, I'm spending 25% of my time just trying to get one meeting on board. And out of that conversation, we realized we needed to hire a dedicated support staff person. And in order to pay that, we needed to charge fees. So I'll get into what the fee structure is. We tried our very best to keep it as modest as possible. And along with that, it was really clear friends needed regular access to support, and they needed a consistent service that was going to be reliable and that was going to be secure. And if anybody has an interest in computer security, I'm happy to go way down that rabbit hole at some point as a sidebar in the future. So specifically, what is the Quaker Cloud? It's a suite of 3 online tools: an easy-to-maintain, flexible website, a minute manager that lets you store, search, and share your minutes with your meeting, Quakers, or the world, and it's a meeting directory, which allows you to securely store attender information where everybody can update and manage their own information. So if you want to, and some meetings that are using the cloud still have paper member and attender directories, but ideally, somebody just goes in, they update their information, that's the real-time picture of who your members and attenders are and what their current contact information is. As I mentioned, we have dedicated technical support. Erin is available full-time from our office in Philly. Yes? Actually, this entire presentation is being recorded. And then the additional piece, as I mentioned, supported by monthly fees so that we can provide this service. So this is a Quaker Cloud website. Yes?
This info you're showing us, telling us all on your website.
Yes. QuakerCloud.org. There is a full Q&A that's available there, plus a Q&A for your local meeting geek who may have all kinds of questions that are, how many servers do we have and things like that. So I'm actually going to jump over. I'm going to try and jump over to Philadelphia Yearly Meetings, or Philadelphia Quarterly Meetings website right now. So you'll notice, if you can see it, I'm typing QuakerCloud.org. If Your meeting's web address would start with quakercloud.org. We're clear this is your website. We're not trying to make it FGC's website sort of behind the scenes. So we've actually had a conversation with Philadelphia Quarterly Meeting, and they've agreed to allow us to use their website as a demo. So they don't have anything that they feel uncomfortable with us sharing on the private side of their site. So this is a Quaker Cloud homepage, and I actually need to switch over to on the live stream too. So what does the meeting get to control here? The way that I like to think of this is the Quaker Cloud is a container. It's up to your meeting to fill it. You don't have to worry about the technology. You don't have to worry about, is the server patched? Worry about. All you need to worry about is content. Now that's actually really hard, but it allows you to just focus on that. And for those of you who know, Marion Bean is somebody who's very involved with Quakers. And when we were first starting out the Quaker Cloud, Aaron sat down and trained her as one of the meeting administrators for the Charlotte Friends meeting. And what was really fascinating, and this is something, we allow you to pick some friends to be your meeting administrators for your Quaker Cloud. She was really good at content. She was terrified of the technology, but she was really good at the content. So the Quaker Cloud allows you to think outside the normal, usual suspects for who could be managing your meeting's website. And often the usual suspects are thankful for that. So, like I said, it's a container that your meeting gets to fill. The basic page structure is fixed. The text is almost entirely up to you. So, obviously, the name of the meeting, the subtext here is up to you. The main navigation is set. And this is something that we've heard a number of meetings say, well, we'd love to be able to add like these 6 other things to the navigation. And the primary tabs you can't. There are sub-tabs under About which you can change. And the idea behind this, I know that it's a constraint, but there's a skill set that's called information architecture. It's really hard. I'm not very good at it myself. And having spent a lot of time on meeting websites, it's not necessarily a skill set that's very strong amongst friends. So, so what we've done is we've created a basic structure that we've found the content that shows up on essentially every meeting website I've seen has a home in one of these tabs. There's a listing of the most recent updates to the site. Under, featured, the meeting can pick something that's a featured story at the top, and then the most recent updates to the website go below that. Your meeting can have as many locations as you would like. When you put in a location, it automatically shows up on the map. There's also a place to put in social media if you have that. And I'm going to go ahead and log in here.
So is this picture of basically 2 columns wide and 1 column long? Is that what you meant by the basic format is fixed?
Exactly, exactly. So I could show you. Another example of a site. Let's see if I remembered that web address correctly. So it's a basic structure. It's simple. It's clean. And meetings have done a lot with pictures. There's a lot of creativity space there. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. Do you have a... Go ahead and log in here.
Check.
Okay. My password is 24 characters, and I'm not wanting to copy it between the two systems.
Mine is no longer there after that.
Oh, that's good.
Are you using your own or someone?
In this case, I'm using my own because the quarter has given me permission to log into their site and share it as an example. In your case, it would be your own, exactly.
And my understanding is that this is actually an exception.
Yes.
And that you guys actually, you have to work really hard to break into this. My understanding.
So for most of the FGC staff, that's true. Because Aaron and I have to manage the service, we do have much broader access. But that's another thing that's really important. Your data is yours. So the data, you're not handing your member and attenders list to FGC's development department. And we have a fairly detailed policy about how it works when you give us data. If it's names that we already have, those are in one category. If it's names that we don't yet have, those are in a different category. So as you can see, now that we're logged in as an administrator of this Quaker Cloud site. And these buttons show up at the top. And you click Create a New Post if you want to add content. So depending on which one of these options you pick, actually, Aaron, you know what? This unfortunately isn't going to show up on the live stream. Sorry for folks who are on the live stream. There are 3 people watching on the live stream right now. So you can pick different types of content, and depending on which type of content you pick, different things happen automatically. So if you pick an event, it's going to automatically show up in your list of events. If you pick a resource, it's going to automatically show up under resources. Minutes also show up under resources. There's a discussion forum tool. There's actually a tool for managing projects. That's only visible to people who are part of the meeting. And then at the bottom, you pick. This is that thing that I talked about around visibility, whether or not your post should be private, accessible to Quakers, or public. So I'm going to just go through an example. We're going to click Create a New Event. I won't hit Save because I think they may not want me to add content to their website. So the way that I would describe this, if you feel comfortable editing a document in Microsoft Word, filling out a form on a website, you can manage your meetings website. It's really pretty simple. You know, the title of the page, the caption for your image. There's not any photos on this computer, otherwise I would show you uploading an image. You know, if you want to make some text bold, you can just click the bold button. And actually, let me switch to, yes. There's a simple, I have a more substantial editor because I'm an admin. If you've got a geek who would like to write HTML, they can still do that. There's this HTML button, and they can type whatever HTML they want. There are some restrictions, but the vast majority of the HTML tags we allow. The ones that we don't allow are for explicit security reasons. And then because this is an event, what's its start date and time, what's its end date, you can put in a location. You can pick if there's content that's other content on the site that's related to it. So you might have a minute, you know, your business meeting minutes from 2009, and you can have as much related content as you would like. So there's this group audience box here, and this is one of the things that we have a new rollout of additional features for the Quaker Cloud that are coming this fall, and this is something that I'd like to improve. But we allow a capability for you to have Quaker Cloud setups for each of your committees. No additional cost. They're private to members of the committee, and so if you were a part of a committee, you can create a piece of content and say, I want to post it to my meeting and I also want to post it to my committee using this group's audience box. And then you hit save, and it gets automatically posted to both of those locations. If you make a change in one place, it automatically gets changed in the other. And there are things here that we're seeing because I'm the site administrator that you folks don't see. So it's as simple as filling out a form on a website. And this is warning me that I haven't saved my work. Do I want to save it? And I don't. Sure. Yes. So what we do is we actually set up what's a cloud committee for just that committee. It has separate membership. Other members and attenders of your meeting can't see things that are posted there. It's entirely private. And that's actually the tool that we're also using for FGC Central Committee. For if you're ever serving on a governing body of FGC, that's the same tool. Another thing that you'll see when you're logged in. Yes.
You log in as a member of the meeting, then you have a separate login.
Same username and password.
You're just on that list. Those people will be on a list that have been approved by.
There's this Manage Members button right here, and that would allow you to pick who are the people in the committee specifically. When you're logged in, you also see, when you're on the home page, you see these edit and delete buttons. So you can edit an address and update it right there. And what else there is? So let me show you. I'm gonna. Oh, sure.
So one of the other features is managing the membership list. I just changed my email or my phone number so I can go in there and my phone number.
Sure.
That would probably be one of those edit.
Sure.
But can I delete the meeting's phone number and address?
As in, so you have a meeting administrator who we're logged in as at the moment, and they have complete power over the site. And that power is complete enough that administrator should have a good password for logging into the site and a good password for their personal email address. Because if their personal email address gets compromised, the site also can be compromised, and there's absolutely nothing FGC can do to prevent that. We will work with you if that happens, but that's just a reality.
So some of these things that only the
Exactly.
can change. Other things that any member can change.
So any member can create a discussion topic, and I think that's it.
What about their address? Are they limited? Are they the only people who can change it?
So
The
they're
administrator and them?
not at this time, and that's actually another feature that we're looking at for a fall release. So at the moment, only the member can manage their address, or FGC staff can manage it. We're looking at an update that would allow administrators. That seems like it's a pretty important feature. We've heard that from a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, and so the other thing that I can say is when you're loading, when you're coming onto the Quaker Cloud, you can just give us a spreadsheet and we'll load it all. So you, as an administrator, don't have to go through the process of adding each individual member. And that can include addresses and other sort of member and tender directory information. Go ahead.
Actually, I think I add to this discussion to clarify. Any changes that are made to cloud, an administrator or someone at FGC, exception of post-inspection.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody,
Oh, yeah.
whether you're selecting a private or a Quaker or public, can't make changes unless you're admitted.
The private Quaker Public is purely about visibility. Who can see content?
So I'm not an administrator, just Jane Doe, and want to see what's going on. And
Yeah.
like this information is wrong, I need to contact my administrator to.
There is, and actually Aaron was just reminding me, we have an additional role, which is a recording clerk role, and they have the power to create minutes, in addition to creating a discussion topic. And everybody from the meeting has the power to post comments on a discussion topic. So committees are different than meeting homepages. Committees, the members of the committee have any member of the committee can post anything. That's a smaller group, and that way it distributes the power more. And the other thing I can say is you can have as many administrators as you want. If you have a small meeting and you trust everyone, that's just fine. This is another screen where we have some updates pending, but here's the tool for come on. You can tell it's a live demo. There we go. So if I wanted to make myself the recording clerk, I don't know why this is running slowly, but confirming that I'd like to be making myself the recording clerk. And there we go. You can see that I now have a role of recording clerk. So it looks like Philadelphia Quarter has chosen to have a lot of administrators. And you also can see when was the last time this person logged into your site. So some of your members will never log in, and that's okay. But you also have a sense of how broadly the service is being used by your members. Go ahead.
So who manages usernames and passwords? Like, with the recovery password, does it go to the local administrator or to?
It actually goes to the individual. So because your email address is your login, you can say, I forgot my password, and you get emailed an email that says, here's a link to reset your password. So for recovery, yes, you can contact Aaron, and Aaron can reset a password. A meeting administrator cannot at the moment. Let's see. I think if there's another thing I wanted to show you real quick. So I'm going to log out here. And so remember how I said minutes are public. You can set a minute to be public. As I sort of imagine what that would be, the search tool that is both on the FGC website and on the Quaker Cloud is sort of aware of permissions and is aware of who is searching. So I'm an anonymous user right now, and if I search for marriage, and I can say I want to look at minutes, we can read, looks like we've got 11 minutes from different meetings on marriage. So, I've heard cynical friends talk about, well, just passing a minute on a topic doesn't matter. But this is the community piece that I'm talking about. And if somebody comes to the FGC website and says, what do Quakers have to say about marriage? When you say a minute is public, we are trying to make it as public as it can be, in part by having it come up in search results on the FGC site. You're not going to see private content come up unless, you're not going to see private content come up in this particular search.
I have an arcane question.
Mm-hmm.
Have you thought about how this relates to archives?
Yes. I'm the son of an archivist. My father works at the Historical Society in Madison, the State Historical Society. And I actually, when I was hearing from the Haverford Quaker collection about their problems with current minutes, we had a conversation about what it would look like for them to have a login to the Quaker Cloud. And specifically, what this would be is your meeting would say, we are using Swarthmore is the library that is saving our minutes. Or it could be, I don't know, some other, really any other institution. And we are okay with them being able to log into the Quaker Cloud and get our minutes for the year. And so...
There's a real gap in the record in the last 10 or 15
exactly.
years. People have been sending them by email and not necessarily printing them.
Yeah.
It is something we've been wondering what to do about.
Yeah. So the place where we're at right now with that is we've had a conversation with some of the Quaker archives. They've expressed real interest in this as a feature, and what we're trying to figure out the money piece, because there are some additions we need to add to the Quaker Cloud. But I think it's pretty likely that they would be able to write a grant to pay for it. And then, what was that? The Quaker Archives. We would obviously work with them on that, but I mean, it's possible FGC could write a grant for that too, but my plate is really full.
Yeah, I'm in Canada, so
okay.
My concern is, do we use this or not?
Yeah. We can. I've had a
really small archive. Right?
Yes.
and
it may be a situation where the larger archives are able to essentially get something that helps the entire Quaker world. Yeah.
How do they get
So each archives would be given an individual username and password, and what they would, when they logged in, they wouldn't see your full Quaker Cloud account. What they would see is a listing of minutes and a button at the top that says download these minutes. The meeting would have entered it. Well,
I can actually speak to that.
Sure.
The meeting, we recently put in 37 years of minutes. Sorry. North Meadow Circle of Friends recently put in 37 years of minutes. I think it's on. I'll just try to project.
Yeah, try.
So they put in 37 years of minutes, and basically the way that they did it was a lot of work. But I talked to another meeting today that was saying maybe they could bring in like a high schooler or somebody who needs community service credit, who knows how to use a computer, because there's a lot you can do. Once you're doing also more than a couple of years, definitely get in touch with me. I might be able to offer you a little bit of additional support, because that's a pretty big task. But,
do they scan it in or what?
There's a couple of ways you can do it. And I think North Meadow, what they did was they took PDFs, because if you have an indexable PDF, as long as it's indexable, our search will still be able to index it and capture it in the search. So even if you're zipping your PDF,
You're saying indexing is automatic.
Yeah.
yes.
You don't have to do anything to index.
It's so cool. So we can actually, if your PDFs are indexable, and even if they're zipped, our index feature will find it and read it. Additionally, then when whoever is tasked with this, they can put tags in also. So if you're like talking about like Society of Friends, you keep saying Society of Friends, but you really like a tag on there that says Quakers. We're not to the point yet where it's going to say Quaker, associate Quakers and Society of Friends yet. But you can put tags. I just feel like
indexing terms?
you can add tags. At this
The
point,
automatic indexing is done by a list that you guys have.
The automatic indexing is, so all of the content is indexed, and it is it's using a tool called Apache Solar, which is the back-end technology. So it does I think it indexes up to 6-word phrases, and there are capabilities for synonyms, and there are capabilities for, there's something called I'm going to butcher this name. I think it's root and tail, which allow, friend and friends can come up in the same search result. It also, one of the features that is out there already that doesn't work all that well is, did you mean arrive? I searched for marriage and it asked if I meant arrive. So it's looking for things that are spelled similarly. If you misspell something, if we misspelled marriage, they probably would have suggested marriage, though. So I don't know if that entirely answers your question, but...
So is there a place on the cloud that tells me what technology you're using?
There is...
If I wanted to geek out.
There is a FAQ for geeks.
Oh, good.
Yes, exactly.
There's also an FAQ that our intern put together for geeks who are concerned about security, but don't want to go on the internet and would like you to hand them a piece of paper. That is
a specific need among friends, and we understand that. So.
Have people thought about the utility of this to the U.S. government, centralizing information about?
I believe about a third. I'm sorry, about a third of our meetings ask me that.
Sure. So it's, obviously it's a real concern. And one of the things that we are actively looking for at the moment is an attorney who would be willing to do pro bono defense if we were to get a subpoena. At the moment, we don't have that. There are a lot of different categories of what the U.S. government is doing. And there are some that we need to be more afraid of than others. The one thing that I can say is that if you compare our practices to the practices that happen in most meetings, members and attender directories are sent around by email. Email is a postcard to the government.
Yeah, I'm a Canadian, so I have an option of not using the U.S.
Well,
another question that we have is,
absolutely.
Do we expose ourselves to the Patriot Act?
So the thing that's really interesting for Canadian friends is that we, as broken as the U.S. laws are, I worked for AFSC for 5 years in D.C. in 2003 to 2006, and I was working on the Patriot Act. That was, civil liberties was my portfolio. The laws are broken, but they do something. And there are no laws that prevent our government from interacting with Canadian RCMP, etc., and getting access to data that's stored on Canadian servers. There are laws that are not spectacular, but there are laws that prevent certain types of searches of, like FGC server, when there is data about US citizens on it. So it's really weird, but if Canadian data is stored with data about US citizens, it's actually safer if it can cross the international border securely.
Of course, we do have a fair representation of American citizens on migration.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And I can go into the details about how we can get the data to cross the border securely. But, Paul.
FTC had its own servers?
Yes.
Their own servers?
Yes. Yeah. So we are based on 2 servers in a data center in Chicago, and we looked really serious. The data center, it's the DuPont Fabros data center, and we looked really seriously at locating servers in Canada, and it would have increased the cost of the service by 4 times.
But you contract with server?
Yes. So we have a server that is entirely ours to control, and the provider does not have root access to the server. They own the box, but they do not have root access to the server. So they can't actually, they have to ask me for the password if they want to do anything on it.
And they have multiple backups.
Actually, we manage multiple backups. There are backups There's a backup to my desktop in Atlanta. There's a backup to a data center in New York City. There's a backup to a data center in Virginia, all of which are encrypted.
This is a very non-technical question.
Sure.
What are the limitations? And if you want your archives kept forever, presumably you have to keep paying your royalties, right?
That is true. So actually, we can jump back to the PowerPoint. That's pricing. And as I mentioned, we're looking at creating a large meeting tier at the end of 2014, probably around October. So if you're a large meeting, over 100 members and attenders, sign up now. And that's the basic pricing. Small meeting, less than 50 members and attenders. What was that?
Do you have an idea what the large meeting?
It'll probably be $30 a month. For 200 members, it would still be $30 a month. So here's the slightly more complex pricing. We don't want to spend a lot of Aaron's time doing monthly invoices, which then your treasurer has to write a check and mail us. And so, we really strongly, both verbally and financially, encourage you to pay annually. $120 a year for a small meeting, $240 a year for a large meeting. We often find that works well with meeting budget cycles. You can write one check and you don't have to worry about it. So quarterly meetings, we charge a setup fee because they are larger and more complicated to set up. And there's an equation if you're a quarterly or a yearly meeting that you'd like to talk about us getting you on board. Stop by the communications office, and we should be able to figure out how much it would cost for you folks, both in terms of a setup fee and ongoing fees.
So it sounds like it's just a flat fee regardless of what services you do or don't.
Yep.
And there's not any say like additional adjustments.
Yeah. Yep. It's built so that you get access to everything. It would have taken a lot more money to have it segmented out, and that didn't seem to be worth it. And what we've often found is meetings will start with one thing and gradually expand.
Suppose that we wanted to have a page like this, not pricing for cloud for something that are needing, maybe not even dollars and cents, but a table like this.
Sure.
Could we do something like that?
Yes. The easiest way, so if you have somebody who knows a little bit of HTML, that's really easy for them. If you don't have anybody who knows a little bit of HTML, create a table in Microsoft Word. Paste it into the editor, and that'll work. Go ahead.
I assume you're going to cover the membership directly part of it looks like.
So unfortunately, the meeting that we have permission to share the member directory from isn't using the member directory. Oh, you do? Okay, cool. So while you're getting that, I can answer other questions. Thought I saw. Go ahead. We are very. I think we have 2 more slides. One more slide.
So what kind of content, which is copy pasted Word plus HTML, because we have on our website embedded tool calendar, which makes it useful for most.
Absolutely.
Can you embed that? Or?
So there is something called a cross-site scripting attack, which embed codes allow. So, but we also are aware that meetings really want to use, many meetings want to use Google Calendar. So that's something where you can just shoot an email to Aaron saying, hey, can you embed this into this page? And once it's been embedded once, it keeps working. So we don't allow, I mean, if you have a lot of those requests, there's some limits around how many of those you can request, just because those are pages that we also have to then manage. Your admin doesn't have permission to then edit the page once we've put an embed code on it.
Suppose that our first day school puts on a little pageant, and we want to have a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Can we embed that?
So yes, it's the same category as a Google or as the actually isn't there?
There's two things.
Yes.
There's an actual place you can put it if it's on YouTube. If it's not on YouTube, talk to me and we'll just make sure it's not like that it's in this Russian poker site or whatever, and then. But you can do it yourself.
Yeah, we really strongly recommend a service like YouTube because, you know, it's a lot of bandwidth and a lot of storage, and they do that for free. So.
I don't expect a lot of bandwidth, but what about storage? What's the storage you're looking for? As far as how many pictures, small videos, and
so we don't have a specific storage cap. The vast majority of the things that friends are uploading are actually very small. What we do have is a cap on the largest file that you can upload. So you can't upload a 2 gigabyte file. The cap is actually a 2 megabyte cap, so you can. That's a pretty large photo. And you can upload as many 2 megabyte files as you want. But it's a cap at 2 megabytes because you know there's also a security issue there, and that somebody could, if you uploaded a 2 gigabyte file, you could crash the server. You wouldn't actually, but if we ran out of space, you could crash the server.
So since YouTube not have the same user management, I guess it's either open or YouTube's own logins, I could not say upload short video, let's say 30 minutes,
Sure.
and have it just accessible by meeting. Right?
So what you can actually do, you could actually do that. So what you can do is you can set a video to be private on YouTube, but still allow it to be embedded. There's a setting once you finish uploading that you can just say, don't make this video turn up in searches. Make it so you have to have the web address in order for it to play, and then you can use the embed code. So it's not. If somebody really knew what they were doing, what was that?
It's security through obscurity.
In that case, yes. And generally, I discourage that. But I think that the way in which YouTube constructs those URLs, there is an intentionally random string in it. That's I forget how long it is, but it makes it difficult to accidentally stumble on a video. Do you want to?
Member directory?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm logged in. I'm logged in as an admin, and I'll show you what the significance is of that. Okay, so we have a couple members on this site. Only one person, me, has actually checked on their name to say I would like my information shown in the member directory. So right here, this is my work address. But so right here, that's me. Now, so anyone who's a member, this is the view they would have, and any other person would be on here if they checked.
Sort of just down below that. And they also would turn up in the search results. If you search your group for a name, you would get their member directory entry.
But there's one thing that is different, and that's this really cool CSV thing. So when people have been saying, I want to make labels or something, you can actually turn this into a file you can use.
Down there.
And
What you just said about the label.
if I click here, it will create a CSV file.
An Excel document.
Which is a comma-separated variable file that is one of the formats lots of spreadsheets will receive in first.
So then I've got everybody's email and everybody's name who did not check, like Chris, who did not check that they want to be part of the directory. Oh, it actually has your real address. I don't use my real address. So
that's my co-workspace in Atlanta. You're fine.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so then you have everybody's in here. If you're an admin, then you can still see all the directory information you might need to do mailing lists or whatever.
So in other words, each individual user can decide, I want my information shown on the web, but an admin can still do a dump of all of the users and do a mail merge into Word or into whatever to send a mailing, or you can copy and paste a list of email addresses and put that in a Google group or a number of things along those lines.
This might be kind of an obscure question, but say I'm managing a yearly meetings member database, and I need to update family members who are all resident in the same address that have different last names. Do I have to update every different record? Can I update everybody at that address who is tagged as a member of that family?
Sure. So
different software handles this.
Sure. So when we built the directory, we wanted to start with simplicity, knowing that we can add things later, and that's definitely our intention. So the thing that we heard from every meeting was members and attenders manage their own information, and an easy way to dump the information out to Excel or Word or some other program. So if for example, you wanted to do, and there are some meetings that I think are doing this, they actually have a fairly robust database product that they're using. You know, they're meeting with 400 members that they're using behind the scenes, and periodically their directory manager logs into the Quaker Cloud, does a CSV dump, and updates their back-end directory. So we don't have a householding concept at the moment in here.
But I understand the mechanics.
Exactly.
It's in there already.
That's okay. That's okay.
So you can upload the CSV file.
To
You can edit the CSV. You can edit the web memo directory.
So you can download with this. If you have a whole bunch of changes that you want to make, you can email those to Aaron. That's a feature that we've looked at, and it's something that a number of people have asked for, but it's not something that we have at the moment.
You have like, can we add categories?
Is there a tagging field on there? There isn't at the moment, and along the same lines, actually, I think one of the things that we're looking at, and I think it's relatively easy to do. So it may come this fall, it may not. Would be a sort of a tagging way to create committees. So you would type the name of a committee on a number of different records, and then you'd be able to click on that committee name, and you would see a list of the members of the committee.
I was thinking more of things like member, attender, listed member.
Sure.
Sure.
Well, yeah. So. Sure. So that's all of that is actually really pretty easy, and so I could imagine adding that as in the fall. It's a tagging field, and you could type whatever you wanted in there. Yeah, so it's not there at the moment, but it's something that I could imagine adding.
So if you were on like an FGC committee, address would be on, it's a member that if you edited your data in your local meeting, would it also update the
Yep. In the FGC directory of members of Central Committee, yeah. It's the same record, so. And similarly, you have one username and password to get into your meeting site and to get into the Quaker Cloud to participate in the FGC committee.
So for other Quaker organizations, use this. I'm from like 3 different towns. Example should I use?
Sure.
But let's say I am a member of, I think that's something that people of color care. Thank you, Friends of Color Care, and Friends of Artificially Color. And so some people may have accounts just because they're members of Artificially Color Care. Some might have an account, and their meeting might also be on. So they would sort of, as with Central Committee, they would feed every year.
That's correct. Yeah, so it's all, you have one user record for the entire Quaker Cloud. So I figure, let me...
Oh, I'm sorry, one other question.
Sure.
So, but if my home meeting doesn't know that I'm on some committee or Friends of Artificial Color Care, and Friends of Artificial Color Care doesn't necessarily know what my home meeting is, that's in place.
You
They
know,
will not, I don't think at this time we're going to see what other affiliations people have.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So it sounds like your email address is always with you.
Yes.
So you got a bunch of older people in our
Yes. Who are very sweet and share an email address with their spouse. Yes.
All the first names, then just Mary and John.
Okay, I'm sorry. I got it. This is kind of a thing. Okay, and can I just say really quick, my other job at FGC is to work with the data. So I have a couple interests in working on this problem. First thing, I would encourage people to like check out Gmail or Yahoo, not Yahoo, but like
some other free email service.
There's all kinds of great free email out there, and some people just haven't even thought about getting on it. The second is we have found that if we do, if it's like John and Jane Smith at gmail.com, one person, and I just kind of pick it arbitrarily, one person is going to say John and Jane Smith at Gmail, and one person is going to be John and Jane Smith plus shared email. And because we need to have unique email identifiers, the problem is we as in you and I are going to have to manually manage their password, and that is not fun.
Yes.
So back to the first option, you should tell them about great email. And this can be a safe learning environment to learn how to use email instead of like when like your gas company makes you do everything online in 10 years. Now you can actually learn how to use this tool in a safe place, and that's how I would.
The other thing I can say is that it's one email address per account. So if a couple is one part of a couple is on Ministry and Nurture, and there's a meeting where the minutes include talk about that one really annoying friend who's good friends with the other side of the couple, if they have one account, they both get access. So there's real reason for friends to have their own email addresses. And you could imagine they're going to talk about it anyway, maybe, but that's the limitation of the tool, and that's what happens when you have a setup where you can just click I forgot my password and get an email.
Logistically, I could imagine that there might be a person who would agree to be the liaison for the email free.
Mm-hmm.
And they could make email addresses for each of those people.
Yeah.
And manage them.
That's a great idea.
So that, because there are some people who take a principled position against interacting with technology, and there are some people for whom it's too late in their life to be making these kind of changes.
Yep, absolutely.
So, I think we do a poor job of dealing with the digital divide.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that is one way, is to get somebody who's willing to do it.
I like that idea.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We don't. They have to have an email address and an account to be in the.
So not exactly. For people who you want in the directory who are never going to log in, we can just they can get a fake email address at quakercloud.org, and because your directory entry is attached to an account, so we just, when you're giving us a list of your members and attenders to upload, it's a good idea for anybody who doesn't have an email address. You can just say fake email at quakercloud.org or whatever, and we'll make sure that those are unique, and that'll be uploaded, and then those contacts would still show up in the directory, even without.
And the email address will change.
Yes, definitely.
It's that their information.
So that's one of the situations where it will be really nice once administrators can manage. And that's, yeah. So
from your reference to email at FGC or Quaker Cloud,
sure.
I think there is no such thing, right?
But there is, actually. QuakerCloud.org. All of your meetings' web addresses will start with QuakerCloud.org.
No, I mean for email address.
Oh, there is no such, yes, we are not in a position to hand out email addresses to people through QuakerCloud. Sure.
Very much, but I don't like to Gmail.
Sure.
Not just Yahoo or any of the other people, but I mean that would be probably a big value-added service here.
Interesting.
Quaker Cloud would enable people
Sure.
that are either suspicious or not tech savvy and worried about those sorts of things. Something that's more in their comfort zone.
Yeah.
Technologically and as far as control.
That's an interesting idea. Can I actually just go through the last two slides real quick? So we've got over 90 meetings, so we're headed rapidly towards 100 using the service. It includes quarterly and yearly meetings. We were really happy to be able to provide, as the new Association of Friends became the brand newest yearly meeting, we were able to be right there and provide them a Quaker Cloud website. They're not even affiliated with us, but we're happy to serve them. You can sign up right now at QuakerCloud.org. QuakerCloud.org has all of the frequently asked questions that I mentioned. It includes the sign-up form, a lot of just other information about it, and as I mentioned, we are working on a new round of upgrades that'll be coming in the fall, and that's just our contact information and the web address. Go ahead.
Is there any way to report children?
Sure. I mean, the same situation. If kids don't have an email address, you can make up a fake one. It's kind of up to your meeting in terms of whatever meeting policies there are around sharing information about children on the web. We would be happy to have a conversation with your meeting about thinking of discerning well about that approach. You know, the other thing that I can say is that I view a piece of my work as sort of having conversations with friends that are doing communications at meetings and talking about what's working and what's not. I think that the work of FGC is about supporting meetings, and so we need to know what's going on. And so if you have members of your communications committees here at Gathering, we really encourage, or you know, certainly you as well can stop by at we're in the room 10 in the conference center. Other questions? Go ahead.
The extension refers to the telephone, not the
Yes. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so 215-561-1700, and you know what? I'm realizing right now that I moved to Atlanta, and let's just do that. No, actually. There we go. I am 3300, and even though you were calling a number in Philadelphia, it will ring at my office in Atlanta because of the internet. A backup for me, yes. There's a firm that we've worked with for much of the development of the Quaker Cloud. They are, I keep on feeding them staff, so at this point they're like 60% Quaker. The former web director of AFSC is there. The principal is an attender at Central Philly. One of their project managers is an attender at Central Philly. So it's a and they are. We have an active support contract with them, and they would be in a position to step in and fill in places where Aaron wasn't able to. If I were to, I don't know, run off with a sailor or something.
What I was going to say was that the Canadian Yearly Meeting has decided to set up aliases.
Sure.
So there's a standard format for the clerk
Mm-hmm.
of each meeting.
Yep.
So it's such and such hyphen clerk at
Mm-hmm.
Quaker.ca, and that way people don't have to remember who it is who's the clerk of the meeting.
Yes.
And if you have a distributed clerk, you know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that, I mean, we took the position that we didn't want anyone's email address where it could be harvested,
Sure.
and that was our way of, so we
Yeah.
just offered.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And we actually, if you email communications@fgcquaker.org, you'll get the entire communications staff. So, other questions?
What are your plans for surviving in the next 5 or 10 years? I mean,
Sure.
you're really not a grant.
No.
How do we know you're really going to be here for a while?
So, in the terms of service, we have said that we will give at least, at minimum, 1 year's notice if for some reason we were to decide we're done. So, and we're also very clear that the information you have on the cloud is yours. So we will figure out a way for you to export it. The member directory is really pretty easy. The minutes are really pretty easy. Exporting the web content gets a little bit funky, but we'll work with that, and that would be part of a, if God forbid something were to happen, that would be part of a roll down. I think that we've reached a point, we're not at a point where the program is self-sustaining purely from fees, but we are, I think that we're well on our way to hitting our financial target that we identified in our budget for this year, and which will have been over doubling our revenue from previous year. We are definitely headed towards and working towards a place of where this is a break-even program for FGC, where the ongoing changes in FGC's situation won't impact the Quaker Cloud. There are, in terms of dealing with technology changes as we're going forward, there's I could say a lot about that. Certainly, one of the next big things that's on our list that we've actually talked with our finance committee about getting funding for is making the site mobile responsive. And this is an example. So once you signed up for the Quaker Cloud, once we do mobile responsive sites for everyone, it happens for everyone. It's not a so that's clearly a next step. There's 2 steps beyond that. I don't know, is maybe a mobile app. I'm not entirely convinced of that, but I've got a couple ideas floating around there. The system that we have built this on has a explicit lifespan of support that will go forward about 5 to 7 years. It depends on a lot of things about when that end of life happens, but that is that's also tied with the FGCQuaker.org website. So we're not going to get rid of the FGCQuaker.org website. So there's a cycle that any nonprofit has to go through of every 5 to 7 years reassessing technology, reassessing whether or not what we're doing is right, so I imagine that's going to be part of the process. And who knows? In 7 years, we may not be talking about websites anymore at all. We may be talking about I don't know what. So part of my job is tracking where we're headed, and I know that now this matters to meetings. That meetings presence on the web. When my generation looks for somebody where we're going to worship when we move to a new town, the first place we go is Google. And Generation X, that's true for as well, and beyond that as well. So we're also clear that, sort of from a core mission point of view, meetings that have a stronger presence on the web are likely to be stronger, are likely to have more people crossing their threshold.
Two questions for you. One is, actually for me as a Quaker, when I travel fast, I go to
Quaker Finder. Yes.
So does the data tie in? The data tie in. And then the other question is, let's say that my meeting wants to break up computers, it's the opposite.
Sure.
How do you handle that?
Again, your data is yours. So we'll work through a process of exports. I think that, you know, obviously the hardest thing is going to be web content, but you know, your data is yours. As far as tie-in with Quaker Finder, that's a feature that we had actually imagined would be part of this when we launched, and it didn't end up getting in the final cut. So what we have talked about is, you know, you can have any number of addresses on your Quaker Cloud account. Quaker Finder itself only supports one address per record. So what we have talked about, and this is reasonably straightforward to do, is the first address on your record is your Quaker Finder address. But that has not yet been implemented, and I'm not sure what a timeline would be on that. Sure. So we have Google Analytics installed by default, and we also have something called an XML sitemap, which automatically sends your site to Google and to Yahoo and a couple other search engines. And the way that the Google Analytics works, we're able to sort of segment it. So it's one Google Analytics install for the entire Quaker Cloud, so we can segment it to just give you access to the analytics for your site. And that's something that Aaron can work with you on when you want access to it.
When you're starting up and developing content and so forth, does that go on the computer that you're using in your office or whatever, or is it always up in the cloud even before it's ready to be released?
It's always up in the cloud. So oftentimes what we have is meetings that are, they own a web address is a pretty common thing. And so they will keep their old website around and keep the web address pointed at their old website. And then they'll build their Quaker Cloud account and then redirect that web address to point to their Quaker Cloud account. That's a really common setup. Yes. And there is also, for people who really want it, there is an option. I didn't enter QuakerCloud.org. I entered CPMM.org. There is a major downfall with this setup, and the people at CPMM know this. There is a, well, yeah, this is your meeting. She may or may not know this. The people who manage the CPMM website know this. There is a security certificate that gets handed out that provides a secure connection when you are logging into the Quaker Cloud. It doesn't work if you have your web address set up like this. So for meetings that really, really, really don't want QuakerCloud.org in the web address, we can do that. And in fact, if the meeting really wants that, we can also talk about a way that we would get your meeting added to our security certificate. It would have a cost associated with it, but you know, it's probably in the $100 some a year or something like that. And
just that'll be an easy way that I suggest.
We would encourage that strongly, yes.
Most people do it, they like it.
Any other questions? You can upload a PDF you can upload your minutes as a PDF. You can upload. There are a couple other places you can upload a PDF. And the cloud, if the PDF has text in it, it will be indexed for search. If the PDF is just images, it will not be indexed because we don't know how to do that. But they can be.
If they are not.
If they're not, they can be in Word. They can be Word docs. They can be rich text format. They can be just a simple text file. There are,
Not like
some meetings are choosing to do both, but generally, yeah, they're a file. And what you put on the page is these are the minutes from business meeting from whatever date, and maybe a little bit of other summary information, and then you go ahead and upload the attachment that has the rest of the minutes in it.
One of the Quaker organizations has been very here tonight. It's one that's it's very protective about privacy,
Sure.
but it's hugely thoughtful. Like, to
Yes.
and is really struggling with documents and records and minutes and all kinds of things. They need to be on the cloud somewhere. And if I understand what you're saying correctly, you're saying that anything that we put up, we can decide who has access to it, whether it's everyone in our community, whether it's like if it's an epistle, if it's a pearl, if it's members of just a particular committee, administrative council,
Yes.
finance, or finance and treasurer, or that sort of thing. So
Definitely.
So we would really for finance at that level.
Yes. Absolutely.
As a question / suggestion for that situation, if you really don't trust the cloud, but you can trust the encryption in the document, do you, for instance, upload an PDF, say Access 9,
Absolutely.
PDF, and you just share it over the phone?
Right, but our folks
You certainly could. That would unfortunately defeat the indexing as well.
Right,
So, but yeah, you definitely.
No, we desperately need
Yeah. Okay. I think there was. Did I see another question over here? Go for it.
One of the things your selling point is that somebody comes into town and is looking for a Quaker organization they want to protect. If they come into Athens, Ohio, at a university, they put in their search engine Quaker Athens, Ohio, would that, if we had a website with you, would that lead them to that?
So there is a dark art which is convincing Google that what you are saying is important and should be listed top. It is there are what we have found. So we have found that in almost every case, because Google treats the Quaker Cloud as one website, and Google pays attention to how much traffic websites get, the vast majority of the times, meetings move up in their search ranking because they've moved on to the Quaker Cloud. There has been one or two exceptions to that, but generally that's true. The other thing that I can say is there are, when you're looking at a Quaker Cloud site, I typically recommend that this language right here, which you can control, says something like Quakers in Durham, North Carolina. Think about what is somebody going to be searching for where you want to be found. And that's the other thing that's hard with that. You know, even being on the Quaker Cloud, if your content doesn't say what people are searching for, it's not going to be listed. And there's nothing that we at FGC can do about that.
So there's certain key places that end up in the keywords tags or whatever it is, like that.
That phrase?
That phrase.
I mean, there are some.
Should we know that?
We automatically create something called meta tags based upon what text you put where. So Durham Friends Meeting is really high, is definitely in the meta tags. And I think there's a description field and some other things like that that automatically get added. And then in addition to those meta tags, Google also just indexes the full content of the site. So we can provide advice about things like that, definitely.
Do you have a template of the basic ideal web page in the surface?
That's an interesting idea.
Stop you from having to answer the questions.
It's a great idea.
Well, actually, when part
Or
of
just point to a couple
Sure.
of good examples.
Yeah.
well, one thing I realized we don't even include in the presentation is one thing that I do with everyone is we do like a 1-hour online training where I tell you all those things like the stuff like Chris just pointed out. I will remind you again that put in what you want people to find, things like that. And then I'll also point out a couple of really good websites, and I'll send you a follow-up email that will remind you again of those really good websites. So, yeah. That's part of what you're paying for also, is you're paying for a real person doing that.
Providing support. Yeah.
So we can't see the files
No,
Right.
in the real ones.
that's true.
I'm really curious about you saying that part of your job is to talk to someone.
Sure.
And I'd love to see some of that being put out there.
Yeah.
I've thought about doing, I've been having chats over dishes at meetings whenever I build places. It's really interesting, the diversity, depending on the size, the comfort level, who gets to write to the mailing list, and who doesn't, and how do they manage the digital divide, and all of that stuff.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
And people come up with different solutions, and if you can share the ones, then people have a laundry list when things aren't working.
Exactly.
And it would be really a service to make that more transparent.
So one of the ideas that's been floating out there that we've made some progress on, but we haven't actually gotten far enough to launch it, is as part of getting meetings onto the cloud, we've run into friends who are professional technology trainers and have really good skill sets for this type of thing. And so one of the models that we've talked about is having a volunteer team that is able and willing to, maybe if your meeting really wants like the bootstrap approach to getting on the Quaker cloud and is willing to pay something for it, we fly in a volunteer and they sit down with your admin and spend a weekend getting bootstrapped on the Quaker cloud. But also I think that they're a really great candidate for writing up some of those best practices that we've found. I have thought and really wanted to do that for ages, and my plate is way too full. So, well, thank you all. Like I said, we're available through the week. We have open office hours, and would love to chat further. And
I want to plug our thing tomorrow.
Oh, yes.
We're doing an intergenerational discussion on why there are not so many young faces, possibly related to technology or whatever, in meetings. So if you have any questions like why are people actually using Facebook? What do people under 21? What do people under 31? What do people who are like 34 want to see? Like that.
So
tomorrow at 3:15.
I think it's isn't it in the AYF dorm? Maybe not.
That was back in March. 3:15. I know that.
Yes.
I'm sorry. But look for signs if anyone's interested. We are up against the Equate action. So if anyone's not going,
Tomorrow is Thursday.
I'm sorry, Thursday.
Because tomorrow is not.
Oh,
yes.
Tomorrow
we're not doing anything. Actually, tomorrow we're not even doing open office hours.
Yeah.
You can corner me at lunch or something like that, or Aaron. Just sleep. Well, thank you all for coming out, and I'm glad to have you. And thank you for the 2 people on the live stream who stuck with us through the whole thing. There are cheers in the room.